10th CDC meeting. Attendance has been taken, noting that Councillor Chambers may be late. Councillor Schmidt will not be attending, and Councillor Powell is still off on sick leave. Approval of the revised agenda as noted. Councillor Coleman and Maretti. Any additions or omissions? Councillor.
Chair, we do have an in-camera item.
Yes.
And I have an in-camera question, but it's not about the in-camera item, it's about the in-camera minutes from the last meeting. And I wonder, is it possible to get that? I'm not sure how to get that in there.
Yeah, as long as we are at this point passing, including that on the agenda, that's fine.
It's just more of an update than a question on the previous minutes.
Councillor. Anything else? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest at the appropriate time for everyone. Delegations tonight. We have a public hearing application for noise bylaw exemption. David, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that last name.
Sinetki.
Konecki?
Sinetki.
Sinetki. 51 CKPC Road, Saturday, October 20th, 2018, 1 p.m. to 1 a.m., and there is a report on that. 2, which has been withdrawn. C is Justin Durand, Machine Advisory.
He didn't do the public hearing.
Would you like to see here in attendance? Objections to proposed road name change, Worthington Drive and Tower Road. Asking a second time. Mr. Trotter, would you like to enlighten us a bit on that? You have some information, I believe. Thank you. With committee's approval.
Thank you, Councillor Carty. I spoke to Mr. Lerone on the phone this afternoon with respect to his delegation this evening. He indicated that he would have, he does have concerns with respect to the renaming of Worthington Drive. However, with respect to Tower Road, the renaming of that road does not affect him. So I said, well, if he comes tonight, he can speak, and if he didn't appear, I could relay that message to the committee. So that's all I can bring forward at this time.
Okay,
thank you.
So just to be clear, then he has no objections.
Counselor,
Oh,
would you like to address the chair first before you make any questions? Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. Just to be clear then, Mr. Durand does not have any objection to Tower Road changing?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving forward, item D, Mr. George Shevesky, Telstar Canada Limited, proposed road name change, Worthington Drive and Tower Road, Cairnsville. Would you like to approach the bench, or the bench, yeah. The podium, sir, sorry.
First of all, good evening. I want to thank the council and the committee for listening to me and taking my request to this point. I just want to start off by saying that at no time that was my intent to cause my neighbors any kind of hardship through any kind of cost associated to the name change. Again, my whole goal was to obviously brand the organizations that I represent, which is Telstar Canada and Zoller Canada. We are new to the area, although I'm quite familiar with Brantford, and I'm sure most of you know back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of organizations from here shut down due to just the cost of the strong union organizations that were in this area. And my whole goal here was to not only brand my organizations, but also to kind of help support rebrand Brant County. Brant County has been a huge support to my company. We've managed to do some really let's say amazing things, and that's only been because of the support we've gotten from the city, the county, and all its representatives, including inspectors and the people associated with those organizations. So again, I would still like to proceed with both. If I can't get both, if we could name Tower Road to Zoller Road, I'd be quite content with that. Again, my intent was not anything but to try to rebrand the community there and support obviously my companies by having those streets changed.
Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the delegation. So you would prefer Zoller Road rather than Tulsar Road, when it's really Tulsar that's located there?
Well, the whole goal of it was to actually, just to give you a quick update on what we've been doing. Before I started this, we actually went out and I purchased another company out of Toronto and relocated it all to Brantford. Since I've been in this community, we've gone from 50 people to almost 100 people and expect to keep growing. I've also applied for the bus routes. I'm sure I'll be dealing with some news on that. It's the bus route right now does not support the area we're in for general labor that we require. So we're growing, and the whole part of that was actually trying to get the streets names changed and then have a big event where we have like the MPPs, the MPs, and maybe even one of the premiers show up for another grand opening to put up the sign of Zoller Canada, which is a division that's not publicly available right now, and it is a division of our corporation out of Louisville, Kentucky. They own about 60% of the pump industry in the U.S., and with all the new regulations up in Canada, we will be importing all that product up into this area. So the potential for growth is very big. And we wanted to do was put up a Zoller Canada sign up on the building and do the streets changing at the same time, and then have a tour of the facility. Some of you had the opportunity last year in 2017 when we first moved in to go through the facility, and you probably remember it was almost 75% empty. It is now 95% full of equipment and people. So the goal there was to actually, again, and the reason for Zoller is because it is a corporate company, Zoller Corporation, and they own about 10 different companies all across the world. So it was really important for me to get that. The Tulsar was, again, obviously for the company in the front there, but we will be putting up another sign that says Zoller Canada.
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, a comment, if I could. You made the statement that, you didn't want to cause your neighbors any hardship, and I remember when you were in before and this is what you wanted to do. I would like to say thank you for that attitude to have there, and I think it goes a ways to show what kind of neighbor and what kind of business person you are. So I just wanted to just say I appreciate the fact of, I know what you wanted to do and I understand why you wanted to do it. And I appreciate the fact that that you can see that there may be some other pushback for reasons, and you were aware of that. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any other? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Item E, Mr. Joseph Cahoon, Cahoon Engineering Agent for Brant Star Developments, request for update to total available unreserved capacity at the St. George Water Pollution Control Plant. Mr. Cahoon, please.
Just make sure to speak in the mic.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members, council, committee members. My name is Joe Cahoon. I'm here to speak on behalf of Brant Star Developments, Mr. Ed Spielzig, and we're here to ask that the committee support a recommendation to amend CDC 209-03 as amended in September 2014. The purpose of the amendment is to accept the changes that council has approved previously, and it is to change the consumption rate per person for sewage and water from 350 cubic meters per person per day to 300 cubic meters per person per day. The developments that were built since 2014 all utilize 350 cubic meters per person per day, and we're projected through, and today there is approximately 5.3 unreserved greenfield capacity volume. By changing your resolution to accept today's criteria of 300 cubic meter, or 300 liters per person per day, would allow 13.7 cubic meters of available capacity for Greenfield. We're asking that this capacity be allocated to Brent Star Holdings for Phase 2 of Stony Ridge subdivision. Currently, there are 27 lots that were built, or 27 lots that were fully serviced, hydro, roads, curbs, all services, water, sewer, gas even. It's all in place, Bell Telephone, it's all there. And as we proceeded for the first phase of Stony 2, we developed 19 lots, and the capacity at that time, based on the 350 and 400, reduced our allowable to 19 lots. So right now we have 27 service lots that do not have sanitary service. They have all the other services, water, storm, hydro, etc. So by amending the resolution, and I've explained the reasons how you got to that, that would be on page 2. You'll see that council has previously allocated capacity to 40 Beverly Street, formerly Parmalat, as for 5 cubic meters. That's previously allocated. Allocated or set aside 15 cubic meters as a requirement of the Ministry of Environment. St. George Senior Housing, we've set aside, or the council has set aside 25 units, which equates to 9.7 cubic meters. And infill lots, which was previously included, was for 19.2 cubic meters, but not in the reserved amount of 116 that was approved in September 2014. So if we look at the development since then, we'll see that Stony Ridge 1 was 44 single-family units in it. It utilized 38 cubic meters. Glenhaven condominiums, 13.4 cubic meters. Pinevest condominiums, 4.7 cubic meters. And Stony Ridge 2, that was the 19 lots, 16.5 cubic meters. And if you add up the total and subtract from the unreserved capacity, we end up with 13.7 cubic meters left for greenfield development. We've run this information through your staff, and they have created some corrections, but this is the summary of what we've arrived at. So we're asking for this committee to support the council resolution 2009-13 as amended in 2014 to allow 13.7 cubic meters assigned to Greenfield and assigned to Stony Ridge 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cahoon. Any questions to Mr. Cahoon? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you discussed these numbers and your letter to us with county staff?
Yes, I have.
And are they in agreement?
They can't agree, they agree to the numbers.
Yes.
They have not agreed to any allocation.
Oh, but do they concur with the numbers you've come up with?
Yes, they have.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Joe. Is it common that you allow that time lapse between the last build and now for water allocation? Or for water
Well,
supplementary water?
the whole basis of the original resolution in 2009, I believe, was 450 cubic meters
Yes,
per
it
person.
was. Yes,
And through the last 8 years, I did a study for 4 years,
yes, you did.
and then staff did a recent study for another 4 years.
Okay.
and the numbers came back less than 300, including lawn watering.
Okay.
So it got reduced down to 400, and then down to 350,
Now down.
and now to 300. And a lot of it's attributed to the low-flow toilets, et cetera, that we have
okay.
now.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Cahoon.
Thank you.
Move along to item F. Mr. Jeff Broomfield, concerned citizens of Brant source water protection request for additional testing and financial assistance. We do have revised presentation material. Mr. Broomfield?
Push down, speaking to the mic.
Okay, thank you. There we go. Hello, everyone. Mr. Chairman, I thought I was jumping into time here when I walked in the room. Mayor Eddy, councilors, I thank you and I appreciate this opportunity to stand before you today and share our concerns. I'm Jeff Broomfield and I represent the CCOB, the Concerned Citizens of Brant. Our mission, to protect source water and the environment now and for future generations. And I get asked this a lot, why do I bother? And I'll tell you why. I'm tired of seeing family, friends, and even pets being affected by cancer and other mystery illnesses. I'm tired of that. And this is how I do my part to fight cancer. Most people focus on treating the symptoms. In fact, one of the charities I'm involved with, we cut hair for wigs for kids that are cancer victims. And it gives us a lot of satisfaction helping out someone in need. Protected, and we won the best monitoring and protections for our drinking water that exists in Ontario. Many of the protections that you guys won are precedent setting, and you should all be very proud of yourselves. I know I am. Thank you. And I'm here today to ensure that all those efforts are fully realized. And I see that Watts Pond Road is being rebuilt. I know that Dufferin is contributing $1 million towards that road, and I know they're under no legal obligation to do so. So kudos to you for bringing that. We just saved $1 million. That's pretty awesome. One of the things I learned from all this is that when the council takes action and they're backed with the support of the people, then that's when we have the power to make change. It takes a community working together to create change. Let's get back to, talked a lot about atrazine in the past, to use a different pesticide, and he's using glyphosate. And glyphosate's being sprayed on the fields above the Paris water supply and right on our wellhead protection area. And a jury just ruled that glyphosate caused a man's cancer. And this is the first of approximately 5,000 cases that are coming before the courts right now. So we're going to see a lot of movement and a lot of action in this area. And what I really want to point out here is that the court found that Monsanto was manipulating the science and working with the regulators to hide the harmful effects of their products and then present them as safe. The courts aren't bound by what science they can use. They'll look at the science presented by the industry, plus they'll look at the independent science. The EPI, the Health Canada, those agencies, they don't have to look at any of that stuff. And I also wanted to point out that the makers of atrazine, they've been in the news as well, and court documents show that they put a lot of effort into controlling the regulators like the EPA and the Health Canada and those kind of people. So whatever you believe in this, there's clearly two sides to the science. Science was never meant to have two sides. There's one side, the people selling it, they say it's safe, completely harmless to humans. The independent science says it's a health risk with no safe level. And a jury just ruled that it caused the man's cancer. So given the risks and the uncertainty, we should take a precautionary approach and protect ourselves. And I actually believe you guys have been taking a precautionary approach. And that brings us to the erratum. It's already up there. Now, I don't know if you know about the erratum, unless you were following the tribunal, and I don't think that CRA came and contacted you guys to let you know that their pesticide study was wrong. An erratum is a mistake. If you remember the Conestoga Rovers pesticide study, the one that the MOE used to make all their decisions, and the author said that there was no atrazine detected on the site, and then Professor Howard said the alarm bells were ringing and the study made the best efforts not to find atrazine, that study there, well, the erratum revealed that 100% of the wells in the CRA report detected atrazine. As you can see here with these numbers here, these are all the wells that they tested there, and they all tested positive for atrazine over those 2012 and the 2013 testing. So out of the 4 wells tested for atrazine, and all four of them tested positive when tested at the minimum detection level of 0.02 micrograms per liter. That's 4 wells out of 4 wells tested positive for atrazine back in 2012, 2013. 100% of them. So Professor Howard was right. Now in March, Dufferin released their 2017 monitoring report. This is an excellent opportunity for Dufferin to prove that CCOB was wrong. But it didn't. We now know that the erratum revealed that atrazine is present in all the wells that were tested at 0.02 micrograms per liter. This testing here in this report was done at 0.2 micrograms per liter, so that's well above where we know the atrazine actually exists. So we know it's here. They're doing their testing up here and saying, hey, look, no atrazine. Out of the other 4 wells that we looked at earlier that tested positive for atrazine, only one of them was tested in 2017. And it was tested at the higher level of 0.2, so of course there's no detection at that level. So this is our request. The CCOB requests that the County Brant Council requests that Dufferin redo all the testing at the lower level of 0.02 micrograms per liter for both atrazine and glyphosate, and that the wells from the 2012-2013 testing for the CRA pesticide report also be included in the 2017 report at the lower level of 0.02 micrograms per liter, and to use the lower detection limits as well for the 2018 report. We have an opportunity to find the truth here. The testing that was done does a great job of not finding what we're looking for, just like Professor Howard said. Great job if we're looking to hide the truth. This test they did was really a waste of time. So by putting this forward and getting the testing done at the proper levels, we'll know for sure whether CCOB was right or Dufferin was right, and we'll know exactly what happened with the atrazine that was in there. And there's one other thing I wanted to add to this was that there was also some testing done, some samples were taken between 2013, 3 times a year for every year after that. And if those samples still exist, if they keep them up on a shelf archived, it would be really nice to see those ones as well, because there was one well that was actually reading 0.2 micrograms per liter. And if we could look historically 3 times a year what all those readings were, that can give us a lot of data as to what happens. I'm only interested in the truth. You know, this was a hypothesis, and from what we could see, Dufferin did everything they could to hide the results and make sure we didn't find the truth. We just want the truth. That's all we want. Okay, so there's that item. Okay, moving on. I've heard that some people question the value of CCOB, and so I think it's important that we get our learnings from the events of the last 6 years. I've heard, I'm going to bring us back to 2012 when we started here. This is our first poster and a picture from our first meeting. The CCOB, and when I say the CCOB, I'm talking about the hundreds of people who stood up and spoke up.
1 minute, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm almost there. You know, we stood up and we spoke up. We made a lot of noise. We even marched through downtown Paris with pots and pans. We made a lot of noise about the cost of the roads, and we know that CCOB's efforts played a role in making that $1 million a reality. And quite honestly, if CCOB never put on that first meeting, if we sat down and didn't do anything, I'm pretty sure we'd be paying for that whole road ourselves right now. Just as certain I am that strong community engagement over this golf course development allowed the county to get a pretty good deal. I'm pointing this out because we need to see that our strength, that when we work together and we stand together, we have a lot of power and we have the ability to create change. When we stand united, we have power. The CCOB request. I've been really quiet about your settlement with Dufferin, and I don't even want to talk about that. What I will say is that our lawyer gave us two choices. We could move forward alone, or we could stop. We could call off the tribunal, stop spending any more money, and what that did was it put us in a potential position where Dufferin could come after us with a cost award. And right at that time, our friend Tamara up in North Dumfries was going through a similar case, and they slapped her with a $250,000 cost award. So we had no choice but to move forward and go it alone. My biggest disappointment over the whole thing was that we were never asked to the table. Nobody ever thought to say, you know, hey, if you want to negotiate with us, never. We could have avoided this whole thing. We had more power together, and we could have got a better deal. So to get to the point, CCOB was also able to pay off more of our debt, and we reduced the amount that we originally requested from $49,700 down to $47,466.45. This community has contributed over $90,000 towards protecting our drinking water, and that's quite a feat. We are asking if you can please help us settle this debt. The CCOB requests the council direct staff or a committee to negotiate an acceptable resolution with CCOB that could be brought before this council again in 2 weeks' time and for a vote by this council. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broomfield. Any questions to Mr. Broomfield? Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 or 3 questions, if I may. The first one is the Roundup. I saw a program on weekend regarding Roundup. And yes, you are right, there is a problem with Roundup, but it was only addressed to food. Water was never mentioned in the conversation. And I don't know whether it's early or whether you've got your information prior to television ads or whatever information, but it was not mentioned whatsoever. It was food items that do carry a minute amount of this Roundup. But it was never said they're going to be taking it off the shelves either. Okay, my second question is this. Is atrazine still being used on the fields to promote corn?
I don't know if they're being used in the fields that Dufferin has. From what I understand, they moved to glyphosate.
I mean, in general.
In general, yeah, it is.
Okay, so if atrazine is still being used, it's going to leak into the aquifers, into the water systems. Not only ours, everyone else's. So if it's such a prohibitive material, why is the province not banning it? Why are they not saying no more use of this product?
I believe what's going on is that the companies do a great job of selling that their product is 100% safe. The main university for building the science in favor of their product is the University of Guelph, and all the major pesticide companies have offices in that area. And they teach the students, they teach the people who work for the ministry that their stuff is safe. So they do a very good job of promoting that product is safe. And it's the same thing that the cigarette guys used to do when they said cigarettes were safe.
But I'm saying, Jeff, and I'm not trying to be
Okay.
derogatory or anything, I'm just saying, it's simple words. If this is such a detriment to our water systems, why is it not being banned from the fields? Why has it been used for years and years in the fields and still being allowed when we know through scientific development that it's hurting our water? I don't understand that. There's something wrong somewhere in the formulas or in somewhere. Connectings, I don't know. My third question is this. Are you aware of how much the county has already laid out in taxpayer money concerning the situation with the water that we've dealt with through CCOB and Dufferin? Are you aware of the fund?
Yes, I am.
Have you got a figure that you could give me? Because I don't know. Off the top of my head, I'm not aware of it.
I don't know how much your lawyer costs. I do know that some of the expert fees ran up somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 or so, and I know that your lawyer probably cost you somewhere in the neighborhood. I'm just guessing somewhere between 50 and 100,000.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm asking you the question because I will find out, but I don't know right at this point. So those are my questions and my concerns, and I do understand where you're coming from. It's my drinking water too. But I also have to look at the facts as saying, if this is such a detriment to our communities as a whole, why are they not banning it? There's my question.
I agree with you.
Simple.
I agree with you, and we're working towards getting Health Canada to do something about this.
Well, anyway, those are my concerns and questions, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Broomfield. Did you mention early in your presentation that you said they were spraying glyso, whatever, and atrazine in our wellhead protection areas?
Yes.
Can you tell us what fields they're spraying? Because it's my understanding, in certain areas close to our wells, we prohibit spraying and actually have an agreement with the land and leaseholders not to spray. So which fields are you referring to?
Those would be the fields on the Dufferin property, and it's the field to the north of Watts Pond Road, and the other field that is still being farmed to the east. And they mentioned in the testing in the water reports that on occasion they'll find glyphosate, and then they'll go back and retest, and then it's gone away again.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jeff. First of all, Jeff, thanks for what you do. I think we all understand exactly where you folks are coming from and why, and we do appreciate that. I want to say that right off the hop. Your last comment that you had on the previous slide, you put on there, CCOB recommends the County of Brant Council authorize a payment of $47,466.45 to help CCOB finalize our outstanding debt in this matter.
Yeah.
To me, if you're asking for an authorized payment of $47,466.45, which is what you're saying the outstanding debt is here, I'm looking at that as you want us to pay off the debt, not help you pay off that debt. So I'm confused at the wording there. And you made the comment of, you would like staff to talk to CCOB and come to a compromise.
Yes, I had an original slide up there before, like I've changed my slide from before, and my request to authorize a payment, I took that off the table, and and instead of that, I'm suggesting now that we have a dialogue, some going back and forth, we can talk about it and come up with something that might be acceptable to you guys.
Okay, now, my apology, I do see on the addendum here that you have taken that off, so
Yeah.
I thank you for that.
Yeah, that's my fault, I was getting ahead of myself there.
No, I was just trying to understand, that's all. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Mayor Eddy?
Well, I want to be absolutely clear, I think I am, that we have two requests in the paper. We have one, the so-called redoing of the testing, and two, negotiating the request. And it does not include number two as stated on the paper. Is that clear? I want to be absolutely clear that we're all discussing the same item, else I'm left out there.
Okay, so for the first item, of course, is the testing.
Yes,
Okay, so,
agreed.
oh, sorry, that's number one. And the second item here is the request. We draft 6.
Yes, sir.
Or whatever we negotiate, you know. That seemed to me a little bitter pill for everybody to swallow here, so I'm saying, let's sit down and talk about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the way I understand. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Jeff. Jeff, a couple questions. In Ontario, the limit for atrazine is 5 micrograms?
5, yes.
Okay. When we, there's going to be ongoing testing as part of the agreement, partially thanks to CCOB. Do you know what level we'll be testing it to? Will we be testing it again to 5? Do you know?
The testing now that Dufferin's doing is at 0.2.
Okay. But going forward, is it going to stay at 0.2 or will it be at 5?
Right now, they're planning to do it at 2. That's what they haven't told me anything. I just know that they're doing it at the 0.2.
Okay.
When 0.02 is the actual, that's the minimum detection level you can go down to. So they're taking it a step up to the 0.2 and measuring from that level there. Now, what that does is it ignores everything that's below that level. And we know there's activity in that level there, and if we can find out what happened, there was one well there that was at 0.2 micrograms, so it was right at the detection level. That would be really nice to see what happened with that, 2013, so 5 years since then, we had this opportunity to get the data, know exactly what happens. Instead of relying on what's going on in Germany or some lab somewhere, we would have actual results.
And that kind of leads to my next question. In Canada, it's 5 micrograms per liter. What's the acceptable level? What do they use in, say, in the States or in Europe? Do you know? I believe it's lower, but I don't know for sure.
In Europe, it's banned completely. And in the US, I think they are
Like it's not 5, I'm pretty sure.
No, it's you know what, I'm not even half?
Okay. I suspect.
China is less than half of ours, so is the US.
Okay. Thank you very much. I suspect time will prove you right, but I guess that's something we'll find out. So thank you very much, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Councillor Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the delegation, the county has all these monitoring wells in that area. Do you not think that if our staff, or when it was monitored, we would find something like this? Or are you not taking our word for it?
Most of the testing that the county does is based on the accumulated water rather than individual wells.
We have monitoring wells there.
You have monitoring wells there?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
And you guys are measuring for atrazine? Okay, I was unaware of that. Do you know what level they're measuring at? Can I ask that?
I have no idea. I presume the level that is acceptable.
We don't.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Broomfield. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Committee, we'll go back to 4A. That will come up in a item number 8. 2 has been, or B has been withdrawn. C, the presenter wasn't here. D is item 10, D1. If we'd like to move that up and we can deal with that now. Councillor Gatward, Councillor Coleman, all in favor? We'll move that up. Okay, so there is a recommendation under 10D1. Street name request, Worthington Drive and Tower Road. That the request for Mr. George Miskevsky, President of Tulsa, Canada, rename Worthington Drive to Tulsar Drive be refused, that the request for Mr. Misevsky for Tulsar Canada Limited renaming Tower Road to Zola Road be approved, and that any cost associated with the street naming change be funded by Tulsar Canada. Second for the recommendation. Councillor Pierce, all in favor? Approved. Thank you. 4E with Mr. Cahoon regarding the agent for Brant Star Development request for updated total available unreserved capacity for St. George Water Pollution Control Plant. How would we like to deal with that?
I'll move that request that it go to staff.
Yes.
Bring that forward.
Seconder? Mayor Eddy? Comments or questions? Councillor Gatward?
So this is to go to staff for a report. Is that what the intent is?
Councillor Wheat?
Yes.
We need-
I've already talked to Mr. Spielzig committee on that development. He's put all the services in,
Yes.
streetscape. By granting this, and this would come forward from staff, probably Don Cunningham. This would give him 8 more building permits in 2019, and 8 more building permits in 2020. That still will not even complete that street, but he's put all the services in.
Thank you, Councillor.
I think it's very reasonable request.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Broomfield at 4F. How would committee like to address this item? Mayor Eddy,
Can we
please.
separate the recommendations, please? Deal with them individually, there are 2.
One recommendation is for, I believe, stronger monitoring of the well testing.
Yes.
And the second one is the payout of the 47,466.45 or negotiate thereof. We'll go with A. First one, Councillor Wheat.
Well, I'll speak to it. We've already negotiated an agreement with Dufferin, and going back at this time to change it, I think is not the road to go. We've already negotiated an agreement with them.
And I believe, Councillor Coleman, you did say we do have testing of our own as well in place that we do on a regular basis, continually, so maybe we should get in Dufferin, CCOB information on that as well. Councillor Pierce, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I was going to say, is we need to understand at what level they're testing there for sure. And that may appease them as to the testing that they're looking for, if it's a proper level, right?
Yes. Councillor Coleman?
Further that, I would say that we asked the Director of Water, Alec Davidson, to have a report back for the next CDC.
Okay. Councillor Miller?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair, because I was just going to make that motion, simply because I would like to know how many wells we have, test wells there. And are we testing to the provincial level, or are we testing to the .2? And maybe Alex could shed some light on it. Well, maybe the levels will change over time, maybe they won't. But I think Alex could certainly shed a lot more light on it than we have here tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Wheat?
Not only at that wellhead there, but all of our wells in the County of Brant have monitoring wells around them. They're tested daily. Our staff is on top of all of our water supplies, not just Paris, but St. George, Mount Pleasant Bow, undergo the same rigorous testing.
Thank you. Mayor Eddy?
Mr. Chair, this is testing for atrazine, a specific chemical.
Test for
It's not the normal testing that's around our wells, and I do appreciate the testing of our wells in other areas, but this is specific to
Right, and that's why...
known cancer-producing, I'm told, agent. That's what it's about, and that's why it's so important. That's all I'm saying.
You're correct, Your Worship, and I think that's why we need Mr. Davidson to let
Thank
us
you.
know exactly what they're testing currently,
you.
so we can further that. Councillor Simons and then Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to add to what the mayor just said, and that is, we have fields and fields and fields in our county that's using Atrazine, I would think. So everywhere needs to be monitored if that's the case, because everybody has groundwater. So the whole county needs to be checked if that's the case.
I can't answer that. I'm not a
I'm
scientist
just
or
making a
chemist or
comment that, you know
biologist,
what?
so
Paris isn't the only place that uses groundwater.
you make a valid point.
It's a comment that I'm making that I'm hoping that we're okay.
Councillor Coleman, please.
Thank you, Chair. All our wellheads are all in agricultural areas.
All of them.
They're all there. And the farming practices continue. And if you look, the sign there says wellhead protection. So they are being monitored.
Yes.
Yes, and you're correct. I've seen them myself. Wellhead, or what do they call it? Wellhead protection area. That's correct. Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I may, I'm not an expert on the water, but if, in fact, we're testing with this water, the province is going to tell us what our testing rates have to be in order for us to meet those. And if we don't meet those standards, we are guilty of it. And we all know this council is in charge of the water.
And I don't think we should assume anything at this point.
No,
I
I'm
think we
not,
just
but I
need
just
to
wanna
go
make a
ahead
point.
and check what they're doing currently
Yes,
and get a feedback from staff on
Yes.
what they're doing currently.
and that's not a problem. That should be done. But
Yes,
I'm
I
just
don't want us
stating
to
a
start
fact.
jumping to conclusions before we get the data of what we currently check and get back to everybody on that. So I think it's only fair to
Thank you.
staff to do that. Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Wheat?
Well, just a comment. My wife died of cancer a year ago, and she wasn't drinking water in Paris.
Oh,
She wasn't drinking water out of that well,
I don't eat.
so don't go there.
Any other comments, questions? So we do have a motion on the floor. Madam Clerk, could you please read that motion?
The motion is that staff be directed to prepare a report on the county's monitoring of atrazine and atrazine for the next CDC meeting.
We don't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure if the mover and seconder would appreciate a friendly amendment. Can we just have in there to understand on all our testing wells, not specific to?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we bring a report back on everything.
And should we add the other item as well to see if it's being tested for as well? Would that be an idea or not? All we'll get is feedback saying, yes, we do, or no, we don't, and what the results are. Members of committee? That's the one I'm talking about. Should we add glyphosate or not?
No.
Councillor Wheat?
No,
No?
I'm in agreement.
Okay, we'll leave it as is then. So we do have a motion on the floor. Members of the committee, all in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Broomfield, and your team for your report. We appreciate it. Moving along. Oh, we got one more. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, there is a financial end to this. How do we want to deal with that? Committee? Councillor Miller.
Mr. Chair, I'll move it to get it on the floor.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Get it on the floor. Councillor Pierce. Comments, questions? How do you want to direct it?
Correct me
Councillor
if
Wheat?
I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, but a couple meetings back, there was a motion on the floor to grant them X number of dollars and refer the rest to budget, and that motion was defeated.
Oh, this
So
session.
how do we go there again?
Madam Clerk?
And if,
We'll let the clerk answer that, Councillor, please.
Yes, there was a motion that was defeated by council to award a certain amount. The question would be if council is of the opinion that this is a significantly different resolution to that. There was a staff report also done on this request, which was received as information by council. So I suspect at some point you're going to be challenged that it may be requiring reconsideration because we just received the staff report on the request as information.
Counselor Godward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was the amount that we were considering, was it $10,000 or was it a different amount? Because it's my understanding if the resolution is, as you said, Madam Clerk, considerably different, which 47,466.45 is considerably different from 10,000.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Then it wouldn't need a
Point of
motion
order
of
here.
reconsideration.
Counselor, yes?
There's no number attached to the second request. It is a request to have a discussion about possible payment. There's no number associated with it. Right.
That is just their current total. You have a recommendation on the floor.
It was moved and seconded, Heather?
Yep.
Acceptable resolution. Just no.
Godward?
Is it in order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought that the mover and seconder were moving what's on the screen there, the last paragraph.
The last paragraph that says CCOB requests the council direct staff or committee to negotiate an acceptable resolution with CCOB that can be brought before this council again in 2 weeks for a vote by council.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, is that different than the original?
That is, in my opinion, different than the $10,000 motion. I don't know if it necessarily supersedes the receiving as information motion, and I would expect that would require a decision of the chair whether or not this is in order because of that motion that we did to receive it as information.
Tonight? Did we?
No, that was previously.
Councillor Wheat?
I'm of a totally different opinion. When I look at that number and look at the fact that we're in a lame duck situation, I don't feel that we're in a position to be, my opinion, spending that kind of money when we could refer it to budget at a new council. But
Councillor Godward?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are not in a lame duck position, this council. I verified that with the clerk some time ago. And the other thing is that I agree with your position that this is considerably different than the other one.
Councillor Miller?
I'll speak in support of the motion if it's ruled in order, and it's simply because I think when you're negotiating, outside of, say, the committee structure, there's things that can be brought up, there's give and take on both sides, and I think there's a few issues that really need to be discussed. So that's why, like I say, if it is in order, I'll certainly support it.
I can say that I rule it is in order then, Vice Chair.
After discussing it with the clerk and our CAO, I believe that it is in order. So we can make a motion on this, and Madam Clerk, if you'd like to speak on that as well.
Just one thing, because this resolution is going to have to go to council before the negotiations start. I mean, logically, CCOB and staff will not be able to have a resolution on the table for 2 weeks from now.
That is true. We will have to change that portion of the request. Councillor Miller and Councillor Pierce.
I would certainly amend it, and maybe we can make it friendly. CCOB requests that council direct staff, and I'd rather leave it at staff, especially during an election, than a committee, to negotiate an acceptable resolution with CCOB that can be brought before the council again in the next cycle.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a seconder to the original one, I would go that friendly amendment, but I would like a little bit of clarification as to staff. Who's going to be involved with this?
Well, I think I'll put the CAO on the spot on this one. Mr. Bradley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was the staff lead on this, Mr. Chair, I was the staff lead on this, so I would suspect if council's okay with that, I would represent the county in the negotiations.
There you have it. So we now have a motion that has been changed, so we'll have to vote on that first. Madam Clerk, revised motion?
I believe it was just a friendly amendment to
Okay.
move that to 2 cycles.
So the motion is as read. If you could read it, please.
Sure. That council directs staff to negotiate an acceptable resolution with CCOB to be brought before council in the next cycle.
Everyone's call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on. Mr. Bradley, number 5, introduction of new staff. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 new staff members that I want to introduce to council. A couple of them have already been introduced to Community Services Committee, but I did want to take the chance to introduce them to the entire council. So I will start with Russell King, who is the new Director of Paramedic Services. Russell's in the back there in the white shirt and the crests. Russ joined the county in 2000 as the deputy manager for the County of Brant, at the time the County of Brant Ambulance Service. He's been in charge of training programs, Ministry of Health compliance programs, our quality control and assurance programs, and he was the architect of our advanced care paramedic program. Prior to that, Russell was with a paramedic supervisor with Hamilton Paramedic Service, and since January here, he has been the acting director of paramedic services prior to moving into the role on a full-time basis, a permanent basis. So Russ is well recognized as an educator. In fact, Russ could teach courses on paramedic service, and he does at Niagara College, Mohawk College, and a variety of other agencies. So Russ has been recognized by the industry in numerous ways, including a Governor General's Exemplary Services Medal in 2010. He has a diploma in ambulance and emergency care from Niagara College, and he is a certified advanced care paramedic. So I hope you join me in welcoming Russ into his new roles.
Excellent. Russ, it's a pleasure. It's also good to know you and the person you are, and we're in good hands. Thank you very much.
Next, I'd like to introduce our new county solicitor, who is Jody Zudema, and she's in the back at the table there. Jody, if you could give a wave or stand up. So, Jody has held a number of previous roles in the legal fields. She's been with the Ontario Municipal Board, and prior to that, as the city solicitor for the city of Burlington, and she was a counsel with the Ministry of the Attorney General for Municipal Affairs as well. Jody has a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Western Ontario, a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Windsor, and a Master of Laws from the University of Manitoba, and a number of other certifications. Jody was called to the bar in Ontario in 1991. Jody could also teach courses in law, and she does, at University of Western Ontario, Wilfrid Laurier University, and Conestoga and Seneca College, where she is an adjunct professor. And Jody will be reporting out of the Burford Administrative Center, and she's in the office beside Robin's office. So again, I'm sure council joins me in welcoming Jody to her new role as county solicitor. And finally, Mr. Chair, Cindy Stevenson is the new General Manager of Community and Protective Services, which is a new department we created earlier this year, comprising paramedic services, fire services, parks and facilities, and community relations. Cindy joined the county in 2005 as a Human Resources Advisor, and it was a position that eventually evolved into the position of Director of Human Resources. And she's been integral in a number of what I would call critical initiatives here in the county workplace, including our Workplace Health and Safety and Wellness Program. She's led a number of labor relations initiatives and negotiations, and she's been the key aspect of compliance to all employment standards and making sure that our workplace is a smooth running operation. So Cindy most recently has been acting general manager of corporate services. Cindy's experience as in the county's HR lead gives her tremendous insight into a variety, almost all facets of the organization's structure, and she has tremendous knowledge of the areas within this portfolio. Cindy has a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of Western Ontario and is just in the final stages of completing her diploma in public administration, also from Western. Cindy could also teach courses as well, but she elected not to. But when we interviewed her, we asked her what, if she could have done her life differently, what would she do? And she said she would have liked to have been a teacher. So I think that's a clean sweep on the teacher front this evening, Mr. Chair. So I'm sure you join me in welcoming Cindy to her new role as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. That's greatly appreciated for the update on the new staff and positions.
And then one last thing, Mr. Chair, I'd like to note that Robin Hewitt is back after a 3-month medical leave, and we're glad to have her. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I can say I have a full table at below the big plows, and you're looking at a very happy person. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You can rest a little easier now, is that it, Michael? Good, good, good. Moving forward, adoption of minutes from the last meeting. Councillor Coleman, Councillor Wee. All in favor? Thank you. Business arising from those minutes. Councillor Miller, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as per at the start of the meeting, I have a question on the in-camera item, and I also have a question on, from the CEO's update. It's on page 37 of our report. But, Michael, you meant through, Mr. Chair, Michael mentioned the second phase of the transit feasibility study is being finalized and is scheduled for presentation to the CDC committee in October. And I was talking to Ms. Stevenson, and she wasn't quite sure that might happen or may not happen. Can you give us an update? Because there's a couple people I was going to invite to that meeting.
Sure, Mr. Chair. I think we are still on schedule. We have a draft report. And I think we're optimistic that the draft report should cover everything, but we have a staff review of it. I think there's a staff meeting later this week and one later this month. And if all is well, we will have it to October. If we're not comfortable with the report, then we'll obviously hold it back. But I think we're still aiming for that target at this point. So.
Thank you for the answer, and if you could let me know as soon as you find out, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other items? Seeing none, we'll move forward then. Consent items to be approved, 8A1. We do have a recommendation, CDC 1876. There is a recommendation there. Moved by Councillor Coleman, seconder, Councillor Simons. Questions? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, if all building permits need to go to development services, are we going to have a dedicated person to look after these approvals so that we can speed the building permit process along? I don't want to see the building permits get bogged down because they're at the bottom of a subdivision pile. I'm just concerned about that, and we have had, people make complaints about the length of time it takes to go through certain departments, and I'm concerned that this might delay the issuance of our building permits.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Pomponi, could you answer that question for us, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure, I'll attempt to. If I can't answer it, I'll get Andre Gravel, the author report, to help out. But certainly staffing. We have the report that was done by Performance Concepts that talked about staffing and filling out of these positions to make sure that we have the process, the staffing in place to review the processes that are required. So we are in the, for instance, as an example, Lori Fox is one of those people who looks at the lot grading and drainage and site alteration. And we're looking at a couple more positions which have been approved by council related to that. Also, what council has approved is a couple of positions, new positions in the building division to look at those reviews as well. So I think that we should be okay.
So is that a yes on a dedicated person to do this particular job then, and who would it be?
Yes, the drainage and grading is Lori Fox.
So she would be the one to review the building permits?
Yes. And that's actually happening right now. What's happened is that the processes were put in place. The bylaw is catching up to the processes that are in place now, and we're revising them to reflect what's happening now.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? All in favor of the recommendation? All in favor of the recommendation, please? Thank you. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll go down to number 2. Application for noise exemption. There is a recommendation there. Councillor Coleman, seconder, please. Councillor Gatward. Questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Item 3, CDC 1883 Council Citizen Appointees to Committee. Recommendation that the 2018-2022 list of council and council citizens appointed be approved as may be subjected to change by council resolution. Mover of the recommendation, Councillor Wheat, Councillor Gatward. Questions? Councillor Gatward, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the clerk. I don't see the Recreation Advisory Committees listed, and currently there are at least 3 working groups that I know of, possibly 4. Have I missed them somewhere on there?
Madam Clerk?
Under the other appointments notes regarding the other appointments, I do point out that we are doing a review of those committees at the moment, and my last report suggested that we would hold off until that review's done before we move forward with the appointments.
But that's a staff review, correct? That's not a
Madam
review by the people around this table? We have not made any recommendations to do away with those committees.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Community Services Committee did pass a resolution to review the status of the advisory committees. I believe that it was at its, I'm going to say April or May meeting, I can't quite remember. And there was some discussion about the context of that. There was a recommendation in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan to do that as well. So the council has agreed to review the status and future of those advisory committees. And in fact, I believe that some of the advisory committees are eager to do this. They also, again, having looked at some of their recommendations come forward, I believe some of them have brought forward recommendations to review their terms of reference. So this council has directed we do that. You've conducted that review and just carry those appointments forward into the next term of council.
As long as it's not to consolidate all 4 together. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. B, consent items to be received. There is one. Town of Oakville, Councillor Pierce, seconder. Councillor Miller. Questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Committee reports. Communications Improvement Plan Committee Report, August 30th. You have to approve this?
Yes. There's 3 recommendations for approval from that committee.
3 recommendations for approval. Councillor Simons. Councillor Coleman. Questions or concerns? Councillor Miller.
Just to be clear, because if I read this, I wouldn't be clear on it, but the request for funding for building permit fees be deferred for clarification. My understanding is the community improvement plan funds aren't to be used for building permit fees, and I want to know if I'm correct on that.
Mr. Pomponi, could you enlighten us on that, please? I'm sorry, Allison.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Building permit fees can actually be applied for through the community. There is allocation for that.
Any other questions? Mayor Eddy, please.
I'm wondering why these recommendations from the Communities Improvement Committee are coming here. I guess they're required to come through this committee. Does this mean they'll be forwarded to council if they're approved?
That is correct.
For final approval?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Moving along to 10, staff reports. Corporate Services, General Manager's update, please. It's good to see you back, Ms. Hewitt.
Well, good evening through you, Mr. Chair. I thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome back. It's great to be back, to use my brain again, so. I've only been back just last week, so I'm still catching up on a lot of things, but I do have an update for tonight. You're probably aware that the OPSU arbitration award for the paramedic service has been awarded and finalized, and basically it just confirmed everything that we had negotiated in the memorandum of settlement. So that's a done deal now. We have numerous ongoing recruitments that are keeping our HR folks extremely busy. There's so many I can't even list them all right now, but including that is our replacement for our HR director, Cindy, and so that posting will be going out very shortly. The responsibility for the OPP detachment build is shifting to Cindy, the new general manager of Community and Protective Services. So going forward, she will give you the updates on what's happening with that. And the last thing is today, actually, we completed all of our training for supervisors and managers related to our new EAP provider and all of the services they provide, which are vast compared to what we had. And our new HR policies, which covered various new leaves that are available to employees. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hewitt. Any questions? Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, yes, welcome back. Okay, so Cindy's going to be doing the updates for the OPP station going forward. Are you able to give us anything at this point in time as to where it stands?
I will let Cindy do an update when she comes up. I haven't been involved in the last 3 months, so.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, thank you.
10B, operations. There is a recommendation there, development and engineering standards revision. Councillor Coleman. Seconder, please. Councillor Wheat. Questions or comments? Councillor Miller, please.
Two questions, Mr. Chair. One general nature, one specific. I'll start with the specific. And on page 65 of our package, item 7.7.00. It says proposed change. The last item says if new construction in an urban area, all driveways are to be paved from back of curb to the front of the garage. Does this mean a homeowner couldn't use, say, concrete or interlocking stone? Like that, am I reading that correctly?
Rob, could you address that, please?
Thank you. So we're referring to section 7.7.00?
Yes.
Yes.
So the driveway approach shall be graded, gravelled, or paved. Concrete, interlocking stone. Back.
Okay, if I read it again, it says rural entrances, I think that's the word that caught my eye originally. Rural entrances shall conform to OPSD, and then it says, and then if new construction in an urban area, all driveways are to be paved from back of curb to the front of the garage. Like that doesn't seem to leave any options. Like you say, am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly.
So
They're requiring them to be paved.
What's the purpose of that? Like, because I know.
Well, I wasn't involved in the actual development of this, so maybe Mark can help me out on that.
I can take a best guess. I'd suggest that the reason it has to be paved or asphalt is to protect municipal infrastructure.
Mark, use the mic. Speak into the mic, please.
My guess would be that it's to protect the infrastructure of municipality. When you have gravel driveways and approaches, they tend to wash out in extreme storm events, and they wash into municipal storm systems.
What about, though, concrete or interlock?
Yeah, they're okay.
They're okay? Okay.
Again, I don't read it that way, and another question, I guess I'd like to ask is, maybe permeable pavers, would they also be allowed?
Yeah, I think the intent, I'd have to talk to Jake, if we could confirm with you and report back as before council. We could do that at our next council meeting. But I think the intent is to make sure that there is a hard surface there. Certainly when we're looking at commercial properties and development is coming in, we look at a hard surface because it's for wearability, for control, again, of stormwater management, lock rating and drainage, those sorts of things. Really, the surface treatment, whether it's interlocking or concrete or asphalt, is almost, to me, in my mind, secondary. The primary importance here is to make sure the infrastructure, such as ditching and storm systems, are protected.
No, I appreciate the answer, and I understand why. Like I said, it seemed to me we were limiting them, and just so you know, I did have a 3.5-hour flight to read all this in detail, so. And my second question of a more general nature, and yeah, if we could get an answer for sure before council, so we don't have to hold this up. My second question is of more general nature, and it has to do with these rainstorms that seem to pop up frequently, and how many of these, because I know that the standards are changing at the provincial level, and I'm just wondering how many of these are being changed, or maybe you don't know, because of, say, climate change and these rain bombs that keep popping up.
Sure. I'm not sure, but I can tell you that part of the review that's going on at the provincial level right now deals with things like LID. To deal with and certainly the ministry's name itself has changed to deal with climate change, which is why it's MOECC. So certainly there is that heightened sensitivity towards issues of climate change. And we've seen it here actually very locally. At least my sense is that the storms are different storms now than what they used to be. And we get very localized, very intense rainfall, which has caused damage to things like the Gurney Outlet, as I've spoken to before. So certainly we're looking at, and anytime when an application comes in for development, we look at opportunities to try to get infiltration into the ground as quickly as possible. And that's to deal with things like to try to reduce the impacts of those large localized storm events concentrating into one area. So certainly these events, LID is one of them. There's a lot of meetings that are being discussed provincially, and certainly our development engineering staff are attending them, and they're in contact. I've been getting a number of emails on some of the issues to deal with LID and stormwater runoff in particular. One thing that is coming up also is, and if I may, is the idea of stormwater management surcharges, or some sort of a levy that's applied to stormwater management to deal with those things as well. So,
okay. Councillor Simons, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mark, if I may. LIDs was supposed to be an integral part of our community moving forward, and I'm not reading from this report that it's much mentioned at all, but I hear you say a lot about LIDs tonight. So are we pushing the fact of LIDs, or are we pushing asphalt?
Yeah, we are certainly looking at, anytime an application comes in for development that deals with stormwater management, there's a certain component of it that is LID friendly, I guess, if I could say. So when we look at these things, such as roof leaders going into the ground is one thing. Probably the best example we've got for LID is the Gurney Outlet and the Gurney Pond. That is a very big and very large example of an LID system. It's getting stormwater, putting it in the ground as quickly as possible rather than outletting it and dumping it to a river or the nearest stream that you can. Staff are very active in provincial discussions or discussions with the province and many municipalities and conservation areas on LID. I'd say that the extent of it, the design and the different systems that could be put in place have not been settled on. We certainly look at that here regardless. We hear a lot of stories, and certainly I received a call from the ADM for Municipal Affairs and Housing about a month or so ago. I certainly brought up the point of LIDs to them, saying this is something that we're looking at. There may be some issues here that still need to be resolved before we can fully implement them, such as long-term costs. So it's something that we are very much aware of. We try to implement it wherever possible, and we certainly are open to suggestions, new ideas that would come from the development industry or engineering consultants that we can implement into new development.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, just to follow up to that, are you getting much feedback from the developing community about the LIDs?
We've had discussions with them in our working groups, and I'd say that, yes, we are. I mean, we are certainly looking at them, and we do have discussions with them. I don't know of any specifics off the top of my head other than the Gurney infiltration ponds. That's about all I have.
Okay,
right now.
thank you.
Councillor Pearson, Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mark, and I think we can all remember, it's probably 2 years ago now when Councillor Chambers brought up the whole LID thing, and you made the statement that we're using them where we can. I'm trying to understand, and that's great, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to understand if we're, how can I word this, nonchalantly trying to put a little pressure on these developers to go that way, or are we just, you know, if they bring it up, we're like, great, let's do that. Are we trying to be leaders in this to say, hey, you know, this is coming, can we do this?
From what I recall from talking with the manager of development engineering, Don Cunningham, certainly he has brought up the conversations, initiate discussions on this in the past. I don't know the nature of them or specifics of it, but certainly we have talked about these in the past for sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Gatward. All right. Microphone, please. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Through you to Mark, 7.7.00 then, the last line that says, new construction in an urban area, all driveways are to be paved. Are you going to revise that to say be paved or LID pavers friendly or something to that effect, so they don't think that it's only asphalt?
Certainly we can consult with the author of the report and have an answer for council. I'm thinking that the intent, as I said earlier, I think the intent there is to have a hard surface treatment. I would think that asphalt is kind of the go-to one. It's usually what people put in. I don't think there'd be an objection to putting in something else unless there's something I don't know about. We can certainly talk to Jacob about that.
Thank you, Mark. There's a motion, or I'm sorry, a recommendation. All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. General Manager's update, please. Operations. Thank you, Rob.
Good evening, through the chair to the committee. We've got lots of projects on the go, and actually we've been having a lot of questions about when certain paving projects are going to happen. So there is a tender with Brantco Paving, which is to start really soon. There's 9 projects under that. They are all anticipated to be done by the end of paving season. So we don't have an actual schedule yet, so I can't tell you when each of them is going to happen, but the tender is about to commence, and they're all to be undertaken this year. If you've got individual questions on them, you can approach me and I'll get you the schedule as soon as we have it. Certainly working on those 3 structures, Anderson, Flanner Bridges, and Martin Culvert are all working away. On the administrative side, we do have the interviews are being set up now for the Director of Infrastructure position. And our operational review for our part of operations, the interviews and the background information has all been gathered, and I think in the next couple of weeks we're expecting a draft report. So that'll be good timing, because we'll have some information in hand ready for 2019 budgets, which is where all the asks will come. So that's.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions? Councillor Pierce, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, you know, in discussing paving and road work and that type of thing, I know there's other factors with this. What I'm talking about is the roundabout that's coming at Powerline Road and Rest Acres Road. I understand that there are some delays there, and I know the work is going to be done. What I want to understand here is there any way that we can go back and re-look at those lines that have been painted there? To be quite honest, it's more dangerous now than it was, because if you're heading southbound on Rest Acres Road, all of a sudden it does a jig like this, and and you can actually see on the curb that's been put in there how many vehicles have hit that curb going south. And I'm just wondering if we could have a look at that to potentially, like there's tons of roadway there to make it, you know, just a little gradual, little bit of a curve rather than that jet over. Having the turn lane there, the left turn lane at Powerline Road is fantastic, and then coming south and north, that's perfect to do that. But I've noticed it myself, and that seems to be the bone of contention of many people that I've seen on my trails of campaigning. It's why is it such a hard turn there and then back? So if we could just possibly have a look at that, and if there's anything we can do to ease that sharp turn and straighten out, that would be great.
Which is the one you're most concerned about?
The sharp turn. Like if you're heading south, on Rest Acres Road, you go along and all of a sudden it just goes and then comes back. And you can actually see on the curb that's there, the number of tires that have hit that curb because it's such a sharp turn and then it goes back south again, so.
I think that one of the problems out there, and staff have brought this up, is that people are not obeying the 60 kilometers an hour.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that for a second, but I was trying to figure it out myself as to why such a sharp jet over when there's ample room.
Part of the problem, I believe, is the whole thing of the geometry of what we're going towards, which we have more confidence now that will be done by the end of the construction season, have the roundabout in there, is that as they're going towards that, there's certain things that are in there that have to be the final curbing in that, and then where they're painting the lines, you obviously, once you get those lines on there too, it's difficult to remove them afterwards as well too in some areas as well. So, and we may not, it's unlikely that we'll have final pavement on this year too. So we'll have to take all those things into account as we have a look at that.
No, and I totally appreciate that too. Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could just, and I appreciate that as well, but as I'm saying, as somebody who, I live by there and I travel that a lot, it's more dangerous now than what it was in there. So just, and that's, like I say, with that jig over, if we could just have a look at it, that's all I'm asking.
I think, not to belabor the point, but I think that the problem is that people aren't treating it like a construction zone. And it clearly is a construction zone. We don't have our civil contractor in there right at the moment doing very much work, but we do have the hydro authorities in there, and they've taken the site over until the next 6 weeks or so. They are going to be doing a lot of work there. You've probably seen the big towers are laying there. They're ready to go up. We're making some progress, and we will have a look at that, though.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Rob. I was going to ask you tomorrow at Public Works, but since we're on the topic, in the monthly status report on that project, Mr. Joe Murphy said it was on schedule as far as transmission towers being removed?
That's correct.
It is, okay, because last week spoke, it didn't look like it was going to be, but we're okay then.
A month ago, we were very seriously concerned about that project being done this year.
Yeah, okay. It's good to hear. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Yeah, I was going to raise this at Public Works, but since we're on that topic, I have to agree with Councillor Pierce on the jog, because I was doing the speed limit and ended up in the turning lane for the left-hand turn because it was dark, and I think my left only, I think, way down on power line by the arena, and so I find it very difficult going through there at night particularly. But you did say they're going to complete the roundabout this construction season so that it will be changed, right?
That's the plan. Is the schedule is for it to be completed in this construction season. And it's difficult for us to address the thing with lighting right now as everything is being changed.
I'm pleased to hear that, because I thought in the winter when those lines are covered with snow, we're going to have some real difficulties if it isn't changed. So thank you very much.
Well, I think we got to keep in mind too, we drive to the weather conditions as well. That's a big thing, and we've gotten away from that the past few years here in Canada, and at least in some parts of Ontario. I know Friday night going down Rest Acres Road, there was a young person behind me driving a white Ford Focus, tooting their horn, flashing their lights at me, and like, I'm supposed to go where? And I'm doing 65. And they tried to pull out twice and pass me to get to that intersection, to go to the arena, which I'm like, this is crazy. So people are just in a hurry to get nowhere. I don't understand it. And it is really a construction zone site. It really is. So, you know, we really do have to obey the rules of the road. Councillor Wheat, please.
Well, I'll talk positively, Rob. I have a family member my son, who just loves to criticize Public Works Chairman Coleman about things. But 12 days ago, he tried for an hour to talk to Coleman at the Paris Fair to tell him what a great job was being done at Powerline and Rest Acres. But Coleman had other things to do. So I'm relaying that to Brian the next day. But anyway, I had a favorable comment about the speed signs you've got up. You're going X number of kilometers an hour. Can we put up more of those? Because you've got one in the south end of St. George, and people really like it, and they wish there was more of them throughout the village.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other items to discuss with Rob? If not, thank you, Rob, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good bag in the other way.
Community and Protective Services, General Manager's update, please.
It's too steep. It's too shallow. Precious. Oh, that's what it was.
We have to cut the speed up.
Didn't turn yellow, Jeff. It's fine. Please proceed.
Through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'm privileged to be here as the new General Manager of Community and Protective Services. This is my first day, so I've been in quite a few meetings today, and we'll be meeting with all of my new direct reports over the next week or so, as well as other key stakeholders for our department, and learning about all of the current projects and priorities. I do have a few updates for you. The tender for the new fire halls is expected to be issued in the next couple of weeks. That was confirmed today by our capital property manager, who got that information from the architect for the project. As well, the tender for the OPP detachment is very close to finalization. 95% of the drawings are complete. In that case, we are waiting for the site plan approval from the architect, and we're expecting to hear from the architect on that any day. We will be doing some recruitment in our department with the departure of our recreation supervisor, as well with the promotion of Russ into the director position. There are some vacancies that need to be filled. And earlier there was some discussion on the Recreation Advisory Committees. Earlier today at the Community Services Committee, I reported that a new draft terms of reference will be circulated to all the Recreation Advisory Committees over the next month for their review, and a report to the Community Services Committee on that next month.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Any questions? Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Cindy. And I hate to put you on the spot your first day, but as far as the OPP station, I don't know what discussions you've had at this point in time, but are we going to get a shovel in the ground this year?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm not able to answer that. I can follow up with staff and provide you with that information.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
We haven't had a meeting in a while, so.
Mayor Eddy?
Well, as long as everybody except the committee knows about it, that's the important thing. Sorry, but that's the way I feel.
Councillor Gatward?
We have a committee that does not...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't catch the last word Councillor Pierce asked you.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I could, I just asked if we're going to get a shovel in the ground this year.
Looking round.
A shovel in the
If
ground for the
we are going to get a
OPP
shovel
station.
in the ground this year.
Oh,
Begin construction.
shovel in the ground. Okay. Well, thank you. I believe that the former director was going to have a meeting with the committee, and we were going to look at the colors, and we were going to look at the plans. We did have one first look at them at one meeting. Now, you mentioned the site plan is going for approval, and the committee hasn't seen the site plan. Are we going to be able to see that in case there is something that we want changed? I think that it's important
Too late for us to
that,
change
that we have some input, that's all. And I believe that former general manager was going to try and have a meeting the end of August or into September, is what we're told. So I hope that that can be arranged for this month sometime. Thank you.
Mr. Bradley, do you have a comment?
Sure, Mr. Chair, and I think and I can't remember whether it's an ad hoc committee or we used to call it the detachment committee, still has to meet to approve final drawings. So that will be scheduled when final drawings are ready, I believe. And then that detachment committee will also have to approve, I would believe, if I recall their terms of reference, the award of that tender once the tenders have been received. So there's a few steps left in that. In terms of the question, will we be in the ground this year? There's probably opportunity to do site works this year. We've got servicing that we have to put in. There'll be site works that can be done even if we're not laying concrete this year. So,
Mayor Eddy?
The Police Services Board has received monthly reports about it. But that's not the committee we should be reporting to, I don't think. So this is very appropriate.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Get it here and know
Thank you.
about it. Thank you. It's
Thank
not
you,
the
Cindy.
Police
Greatly
Services
appreciate
Board
it.
that are in charge of the project. Not that they shouldn't know about it, but they're not in charge of it.
Thank you, Your Worship.
But
sure.
They know.
and through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe this Police Services Board has made any decisions on the project. They have received updates. The detachment committee, to my understanding, has made all the decisions on the project. But I haven't attended those meetings for a while, but it's my understanding that the detachment committee is charged with making the decisions, and the Police Services Board have asked for a monthly update on the project, and they have received a monthly update on the project from the general manager. So that's my understanding, but that can be, this committee could provide different direction if that was required.
And it's the county that's paying for the building, right? Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you. Moving forward, we've gone through Community Protective Services, General Manager's Report, Development Services now. We've gone through item 1 already, and we'll go to General Manager's Update, please. Thank you, Mr. Pomponi.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much an update. What I did want to do, we discussed circulation packages on development applications at our last meeting. So what I brought here is an example of what is typically circulated for a development application. This is Kingwood Homes. With it is approximately 10 or 12 reports, including traffic, geotechnical, stormwater management, planning justification, archaeological, and probably a few others that I can't recall. But I brought this just as an example of what we have to deal with. That's really all I wanted to update on.
Councillor Pierce.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mark, can you confirm that that's a number of copies for each one of those, or that's one report on top there?
This is one submission, this is one package that would go to development engineering or to the GRCA. So this is not multiple copies, this is a single copy of all the submissions. Wow. The largest one on the bottom here, which is white, that's the traffic study.
And that's why when staff gets it, they have to go through it very thoroughly to make sure we're all covered in the county end of it, to make sure that things are dotted and crossed and everybody's safe.
Yeah. And just to let you know that when we get this package in, the turnaround time for reviewing it is 4 weeks. If there are any major changes to it, we're given an additional 2 weeks to comment on it. This is Kingwood Homes, yes.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you for the demonstration there, Mark. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mark. Will we be posting for a policy planner for the planning department?
Yeah, certainly Rob and I have had discussions internally about, we have a couple of positions that are required. 2 have been advertised, I believe, maybe Friday. But we are having conversations now about the job postings, yes, internally.
Just a question too about a planner. I know some positions, well, I think you know as well, some positions are tough to fill. Is that planner one of those, or are they a dime a dozen? I have no idea.
Yes, they are.
A dime a dozen?
No, they're not dime a dozen. They're tough to fill. Pretty much any position within our the Development Services Department are difficult to fill. Engineering for sure. The main reason being is that we're competing with the private sector right now. This tends to go in a bit of a pendulum. Sometimes it's easier to recruit, sometimes it's more difficult. As an example, when we originally posted for a development engineering position about 4 years ago, we had, I think, 65 applicants. This next time, for the exact same position, we've gone through 2 postings and we don't have anybody yet.
Okay.
So it's, I know, and I think I said this at our last meeting, I believe there was a couple of possibly CAOs, possibly mayors from eastern municipalities that certainly had expressed their concerns about hiring and being able to recruit. But it's a competition out there. I know, yeah, it's pretty tough.
Okay, thank you.
One thing we are looking at is maybe different ways that we can start recruiting. Possibly, we haven't quite had these conversations yet about maybe a co-op program as a way to bring people in at the beginning of their careers, training them. Certainly we're looking at that possibly for planning. Some programs such as the University of Waterloo have co-op programs. I believe that there are some engineering programs at Moral College who have a co-op as well. So we're going to start looking at those and possibly using it to bring in staffing as well.
Councillor Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, a comment, if I could, about what Mark has shown us there. Wouldn't this be fantastic information for the general public to see what is involved with this? Because I believe, I'm sure it's an eye-opener to everybody around this table. I believe that things like this are what we need to show the public as to what is involved with all these things. So thank you for that. And yeah, I don't know how we get it out there, but hopefully they're going to watch because it's being filmed tonight. Mark, hold that up, will you? If everybody can just see.
Sure.
Thank you. And just to reiterate for those listening, it's 4 weeks to get through that.
Yes,
One
it is.
application.
Thank you.
On the initial submission.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Thanks, Mark.
If I may follow up on that, that's to get it to draft plan approval. Once you get past draft plan approval, you got to get into the detailed engineering design and review.
Yeah, it's just phase 1.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Moving along, we have Economic Development, Strategic Investment, General Manager's update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of updates. We wrapped up 2 separate filming projects in the county in the last week of August. Filming requests continue to increase month over month, and I've mentioned in the past that's something that we're going to have to address through a more formal strategy process, so we will be starting that. The air show and the Paris Fair both happened the same week. There were no concerns noted, and we've had great feedback so far on both of those. We're currently wrapping up work on the new CIPs for Burford and St. George, and heard from the consultant that we'll be receiving drafts in October for review. Consultations for the economic development strategy are ongoing, and we have our focus group starting later this month. Next week, I believe, is our first one. And all the preparations have been made for a salute to Brant, and so I'd remind everyone, if you haven't done so already, to register. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much, Allison. Moving forward to the Office of the CAO, there is a item there, CD 1880, Paramedic Service Agreement. Recommendation, Councillor Coleman, Mayor Eddy. Questions, concerns? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you so much. CAO's update, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide a few updates on some things that I have on the go. The Brant Community Health Hub project, which is we are still working on. Allison and I met with the family health team earlier today, and I think we're pretty much finalized a letter of intent with them to contribute to the project. We received 12 expressions of interest through that process we put out a while ago from other parties who are interested in participating. Very good expressions of interest. And so I'll be bringing a report forward in the near future with an updated business plan based on what we've learned from the letter of intent with the family health team, as well as from those submissions. And then I'll be asking you to improve that letter of intent at that time. And I think at that point we'll have a better business case, a less conceptual and more what I would call tight business case for the community health hub. So I think that's a project that has a lot of future to it, and I think I'm quite confident that we've got a good group of participants for the project. I wanted to chat a little bit about emergency management. It was discussed a little bit at the last council meeting, and I have chatted with a few councilors, but the fire chief, our new emergency management coordinator, Mr. Potroff, and I met in late August, and we reviewed the status of our emergency management program. And I think our program is very good, but we do have some policy gaps that our new Mr. Potroff is identifying as he goes through our background. It's a complicated policy area of the municipal world, so we'll be bringing some recommendations forward in the near future on sewing up those gaps. Also, it was mentioned at the last meeting, but we are planning our annual emergency planning exercise. We are looking at the first week of November to do that, where there'll be a staff team that gets together and we'll do some training and then we'll do a mock exercise. The question was asked if council could attend that, and we're going to facilitate council doing a drop-in and visitation, kind of, if you will, on a portion of that. I mean, it is something that we use to train ourselves, and we want to be very focused on that because our performance in that process is going to determine how well we perform in a real emergency. So we don't want to, I'm very cautious about that. But one thing we will also be providing, and I discussed this with the fire chief, is training for council on their role and responsibilities in the event of emergency, because council has a specific role through that, as I do as your CAO, as the fire chief does as the community emergency management coordinator. So we all have roles. The mayor has a specific role on declaring emergency. I have a specific role as the lead of the emergency operations center, and certainly people like Russell and the fire chief have specific roles as the people on the ground that actually manage the emergency. So it's an important part of our business, and we want to make sure we have everything in order so when that emergency happens, we're in good form. I believe we are now, but there are some things we can improve on. So, in terms of the cannabis evolving cannabis legislation, and I mentioned it before, but I have assigned this to the county solicitor, so she's going to be leading the compliance program for council. So you'll see reports in the near future on that. There's some targets. I think there's an October target and there's a spring target on certain things we have to have in place. So I believe there actually is a big conference call tomorrow with the ministry. A number of staff are participating in that. So, finally, I wanted to just mention the municipal election. I just chatted with the clerk. The voter notification cards will be in mailboxes throughout the county on September 25th. Advanced voting dates are October 1st and October 13th. I believe there's a number of locations. And recruitment for all election positions that we have bring in to support us through the election are ongoing, and we'll also be relying on county staff to help us staff the polls on that day. So I think that's well underway, and the clerk and her team have a good handle on that. The last thing I wanted to mention when I was introducing the staff, Cindy will be working out of the Curtis Avenue office, and Russell is, of course, still stationed out of the Henry Street station. So that's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Oh, Mayor Reddy.
Do we have an estimated date for the family doctor's team moving into their rented accommodation? Do we have an idea when that will be done? I know they're working on it.
Mr. Chair, I understand that they've got a November target date, and that you could probably provide more information than I could. But.
So the FHT actually does have a good date that is firm now. That'll be in November, and everything's moving along on schedule. They're actually doing the painting inside now and finishing some of the ceilings and lightings. I have no idea. As long as it's not pink, I'm happy. Councillor Simons?
If I may ask a question, I was informed today that it's a great possibility that the urgent care in Paris is leaving. Does anyone have an update or any information regarding that? Because it's out on the street, so I just want to let everybody know that it's there. So,
as a member of the FHT board, I've heard nothing. They've heard nothing. As a matter of fact, we did hear that they are going to be opening up those offices that the doctors had into other needed medical services for the community here. So I don't know where that information came from, but there's a lot of stuff circulating, so I would just play it by ear. But I've heard nothing, and nothing has not come from the office of the Brant County Healthcare System either, so.
Okay, just a comment, that's all.
Councillor Coleman? Goutward, Councillor Goutward, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair and Councillor Coleman. I'm glad to hear from the CAO that there will be an opportunity for council to be educated once you have all the Ts and Is crossed and dotted on our emergency management plan. I think it's very wise that council is informed and has a general idea when the plan goes into effect. Hopefully it doesn't ever have to, but the way climate change is affecting our weather, it's probably just a matter of when it happens in Brant. But I'm really pleased because if, as councillors, we start getting phone calls from residents, we have to know what to tell them, and I want to be prepared. So thank you very much for that.
Councillor Coleman, please.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to talking about moving over to the doctor moving over, how many will be moving over?
So there's 3 doctors that'll be going into the old BME office. The other doctors will be going to, one will be going to a facility, I believe, in St. George, and there's another one going to the other facility in Burford.
Where he is.
Yes.
Burford, not in air. There's nothing going to air. There's no one going to air, because I heard that.
There is one going to air as well, but he has a
Yeah.
practice there
Yes.
currently anyway, so he'll stay there
So,
during the process, yes. Yeah, so they're just dividing a few of them up because they all couldn't go into the BME office.
How many doctors do we have in Paris at the Willard at present?
John Tamale,
5, I think.
Raja, Piercy, it's probably 6.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I didn't
and they're
know.
looking, they're actually recruiting for more, and the new health hub will surely get us some new students for sure, graduates.
Students?
Graduates, medical
Interns?
graduates.
Interns?
Pardon me?
Interns?
Nope, they're already graduated, all finished, PhD'd, everything,
So we're
doctored,
going
everything.
to have numerous doctors.
We're hoping. And the new it's proven fact that new buildings draw new doctors to the area. It's proven fact.
With parking.
Yeah, parking is a big deal, yes. Okay, moving forward, after the CEO's update, there is no communications matter referred by council. There is none. Other business, Councillor Miller? No, there is none. That'll come up under in camera. May we go in camera, please? Councillor Coleman Maretti, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Take 1 minute and we'll go in council, in camera.